It's July 2020, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them up. Number 1, unidentified federal agents are arresting protesters. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Facepalm 5. Let's get right to it. It has now been almost a week since federal agents dressed in camouflage with no insignia identifying them as belonging to any particular agency, traveling in unmarked vans, began abducting people off the streets of Portland, Oregon. The Trump administration has acknowledged the presence in Portland of officers belonging to several federal agencies, including the Customs and Border Protection Agency and the U.S. Marshals. The justification cited for this federal law enforcement presence is to protect federal property from protesters. However, that doesn't explain why several people have reported being snatched by these unidentified agents from areas nowhere near federal property while they were doing nothing more than walking down the street. One such person, Mark Pettibone, speaking to Oregon Public Broadcasting, describes being grabbed off the street and tossed in a van with his hat pulled down over his eyes so he couldn't see where he was being taken. His abductors didn't identify themselves. He was driven around the city for some time before being taken inside a building, which he only learned later was the federal courthouse, where he was photographed and the agents went through his belongings. He was informed of his Miranda rights, but never told why he was arrested. When Pettibone refused to waive his rights and asked for a lawyer, at that point, the agents released him. He was given no paperwork of any kind, no record of his arrest. How is this okay? I mean, how is this okay with anybody? Let's say that the characterization of the protesters in Portland by Trump and his cronies is accurate. It's not. The protesters in Portland have remained predominantly peaceful, despite regularly being bullied and tear-gassed and subjected to other acts of violence by police. But let's say Trump is right, and these protesters are violent anarchists, as he has repeatedly called them. Why is it okay for federal agents to arrest people who are nowhere near federal property, who they have no reason to suspect of committing any crime on federal property, who they have no reason to suspect of committing any crime anywhere? And even if the streets are crawling with violent anarchists, why is it okay for those agents to not identify themselves or provide the person they've arrested with a reason for their arrest or keep a record of the arrest? Why blindfold him and drive around the city before taking him to the courthouse? Let's say the streets of Portland are being overrun by violent anarchists. What about that would justify this secret police bullshit? The answer is nothing. Even if the situation in Portland were as Trump and his people describe it, nothing would justify this. So the fact that the situation in Portland is not as Trump describes it, the fact that the streets are not being overrun by violent anarchists, the fact that the protesters are peaceful and the small number of them that are committing illegal acts are mostly committing acts of vandalism makes the presence and actions of these unidentified federal agents even more inexcusable. And I know a lot of people are asking this question, so I might as well ask it too. Where are all the anti-government militia types to stand up for their fellow citizens in all this, huh? Whenever someone belittles them for cosplaying as army men, whenever anyone proposes the slightest strengthening of firearms regulations, these dipshits leap to their feet and start quoting the Second Amendment like it was holy scripture, shouting that their right to bear arms shall not be infringed because an armed populace is the only protection against an authoritarian government. Someone says, hey, let's ban assault rifles after a school shooting, and they're all, give me liberty or give me death. But unidentified federal agents start arresting people on the streets without cause. and without even leaving a paper trail. And it's crickets from these assholes, not a peep of protest, let alone any of them showing up to put their money where their mouths are. And you know what? It doesn't surprise me one bit, because I've always suspected that their Don't Tread on Me act was just a pose. They say they want they want limited small government. They say they care about individual liberty, but what they actually want is to feel strong. And if they can get that feeling, all their other professed principles are negotiable. They're bullies who want to feel like big men, and when they see agents working for their thug president hitting the streets and knocking these kids around for protesting, that makes them feel good. Shallow, petty sadists that they are. And that's all they care about. They will not only tolerate fascism, they will help to march fascists into the highest halls of power, crowing about individual liberty every step of the way, because they don't fucking care, as long as it makes them feel strong. And if that strikes you as a tad inconsistent, well, that's on brand for them too. Because here's another example. Number 2, Republicans pay their hypocritical respects to John Lewis. Congressman John Lewis, one of the brightest lights of the civil rights movement, who spent most of his life fighting for equality and to ensure that all people had not only the right to vote, but the ability to freely exercise that right, died last week at the age of 80. And tributes, of course, came pouring in, most of which were moving and appropriate, including one from former President Barack Obama. But not every tribute to John Lewis rang as true or as heartfelt as Obama's. When Republicans attempted to honor John Lewis and also to associate themselves with his heroic legacy, they fell kind of flat. In at least 2 cases, Republicans paid tribute to the wrong person. Senators Marco Rubio and Dan Sullivan both posted photos of themselves standing, they thought, next to John Lewis, except they weren't standing next to John Lewis in the photos they posted. They were standing next to Elijah Cummings. Wrong, dead black congressman. You racist pieces of shit. Other prominent Republicans didn't risk posting photos of John Lewis. They just wrote about what a great guy he was and how much they admired him. Brian Kemp, governor of Lewis's home state of Georgia, declared Lewis a, quote, civil rights hero who changed our world in a profound way. As Georgia's Secretary of State, Brian Kemp did more than probably any other individual in the state to rob citizens, particularly low-income voters and people of color, of their ability to exercise their right to vote. His voter suppression policies probably played a role in allowing him to win the election for governor in the first place. This is a guy who claims to think of John Lewis as a hero. Another tribute to Lewis came from Kevin McCarthy, the lead Republican in the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, McCarthy did post a photo of himself and John Lewis, and it was actually John Lewis, crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama a few years ago. And he said that getting to recreate that historic march across that bridge with John Lewis was one of the greatest honors of his life. It was such an honor to Kevin McCarthy that this past December, he, along with almost every other Republican in the House of Representatives, voted against a bill to renew the Voting Rights Act that John Lewis co-sponsored. What a heartfelt tribute. You can tell he really felt it right here, huh? Then there was Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who praised Lewis for fighting racism, promoting equal rights, and bringing America into greater alignment with its founding principles. McConnell also writes in his tribute that Lewis is one of the giants of American history and credits him as being one of those who, quoting Martin Luther King Jr., has helped to bend the arc of our moral universe toward justice. I love that quote. I've quoted that line from Dr. King many times in videos on this channel. What has Mitch McConnell, the man with such profound respect for the legacy of John Lewis, what has he done to bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice. Well, remember that bill to renew the Voting Rights Act that John Lewis sponsored back in December? Well, it passed the House without Republican support, and it's been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk ever since. It's July now. The bill passed in December. McConnell hasn't even allowed it to come up to a vote. Every Republican who wants to honor the legacy of John Lewis first needs to stop working day after day to dismantle it. And if they don't want to do that, they can choke on shit. Number 3, Trump administration demands schools reopen during a pandemic. So why are we even arguing about this? You want the clearest example yet that this administration is being run by fucking sociopaths who do not give a shit about anything but how much money they can strip mine out of the economy and the federal budget? Trump and his Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, who isn't even qualified to be hired as a public school teacher, but is now in charge of the Department of Education, are demanding that states totally reopen schools for in-person instruction during a pandemic. And not just during a pandemic that in much of the country is still getting worse, not better, due to the reckless policies of Republican governors and irresponsible behavior of right-wing dipshits who think refusing to wear a mask when they go to Walmart makes them Patrick fucking Henry. I'm doing a whole video about this subject. I scripted it over the weekend. I'm shooting it tomorrow. Hopefully it will be up sometime on Wednesday. So I won't go into a lot of detail here. I'll just say this. There is no good reason to send students and teachers back into school buildings where they will only be at risk of getting themselves sick and spreading the virus to others. Internal documents from the CDC obtained by CNN a little over a week ago confirmed that fully reopening schools would be the highest risk for spreading the virus. And the Trump administration knows this. They're aware of this, which is why they've tried to block the CDC from getting this message out. Trump complained that the CDC's guidelines for safely reopening schools were too tough and expensive. Trump's press secretary said, quote, "The science shouldn't stand in the way of reopening schools." And on Friday, CNN reported that the White House has blocked CDC officials from testifying before the House Education Committee about the school reopening issue. They're lying about how safe it is. They're trying to muzzle scientists and public health officials, and people, including teachers, including children, are going to die as a result. But don't take my word for it. After all, I'm just a Democrat who only wants to keep schools closed to make Trump look bad. Number 4, numbers of new COVID cases per day continue to climb. Well, speak of the devil. Speaking of shit that makes Trump look bad. In the past couple of weeks, the United States has seen the number of daily new reported cases of COVID-19 reach record numbers. On July 1st, that number hit 50,000 for the first time. On this past Friday, it hit 75,000. And remember, that's not a cumulative number. That's the number of new cases reported that day. And it's not just the numbers of new cases, which Trump tries to dismiss by saying, oh, it's because we're testing more. The rate of positive test results is continuing to climb in many states as well, particularly in the Southeast. One of those southeastern states is Georgia, where Governor Brian Kemp, remember him, recently issued an executive order blocking local jurisdictions from requiring people to wear face masks in public. We're 6 months into this pandemic, and instead of getting better, it's getting way, way worse because Republicans like Brian Kemp and Donald Trump are actively fighting efforts by others to make it better. And now it's time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. And please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. He commuted the sentence of his friend and former campaign advisor Roger Stone, who has been convicted of lying to Congress and obstructing justice in order to protect Trump from the Mueller investigation. Trump's commutation of Stone's sentence goes against the recommendation of his own Justice Department, which Trump has repeatedly attacked for prosecuting Stone in the first place. Because who the hell do they think they are, trying to hold Trump's friends accountable for the crimes they committed for Trump? Where do these people think their job is? Come on. He claimed that a 3-mile run of fencing built by a private company along a wildlife refuge near the U.S.-Mexico border was, quote, only done to make me look bad. The fencing, which is now threatened by erosion, was built by a company with a CEO that has repeatedly publicly supported Trump. And not only that, Trump himself has supported this company in return, pushing for them to get a government contract to build the wall. Now that the wall has become something of an embarrassment because it is not physically or structurally sound, now Trump decides, oh, they only did that to make me look bad. According to a recent FEC filing, Trump's presidential campaign has spent nearly $3 million at Trump family-owned properties and businesses during this election cycle. The Republican Party itself has spent another $1 million at Trump-related businesses. That's money raised from contributors being redistributed right into the pocket of Donald Trump and his family. Washington Post reporter David Fahrenthold tweeted that this past March, the Trump campaign spent $380,000 at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in 2 days. Well, speaking of corruption, after Goya Foods faced a backlash following its CEO praising Trump, Trump posed in the Oval Office with a selection of Goya products on the Resolute desk. And actually, I have a picture that I can show you. Let me show you in case you haven't seen it yet. Trump posing at the Resolute desk with a selection of Goya products. There he is. There's Trump. And there you see he has his trademark 2 thumbs up pose and that pasted on dead-eyed grin. And of course, the day before, Trump's daughter Ivanka, who also officially works at the White House, posted a picture of herself posing with a can of Goya beans, accompanied by the tagline written in Spanish and English, "If it's Goya, it has to be good." And this is all because the CEO of Goya is facing backlash for supporting Trump. People are calling for boycotts of Goya products. So if it's Goya, it has to be good. And if it's a White House official endorsing a commercial product, it has to be a violation of ethics regulations. According to the Washington Post, Trump administration officials are trying to block additional funding for testing and contact tracing from a new COVID-19 relief bill currently being assembled in the Senate. Republicans in the Senate are proposing $25 billion for testing and contact tracing, but Trump administration officials are arguing for that amount to be reduced to 0. That's right. Republicans in the Senate are trying to spend $25 billion on COVID testing and contact tracing, and Trump's White House doesn't want them to spend anything. The White House is also pushing to eliminate $10 billion in additional funding to the CDC from the bill during a pandemic. And finally, let's talk about that interview that Trump gave to Fox News Channel's Chris Wallace over the weekend. And by the way, don't you love how Chris Wallace interviews Trump the same way his dad interviewed the Ayatollah? Because he has to lead with deference and humility because he knows the guy he's interviewing is such a thin-skinned baby that he'll never get an answer any other way. Oh, forgive me, Imam. Their words, not mine. Anyway, during the interview, Trump denied that he's trailing Joe Biden in the polls because those polls are fake. Okay. He threatened to veto the upcoming National Defense Authorization Act, which is the piece of legislation that funds the military. It's what's known as a must-pass bill. And Trump is threatening to veto it due to a provision that has been added to it this time around that would rename military bases currently named after Confederate generals. When Wallace pointed out that the Pentagon actually supports renaming the bases, and also renaming the bases has bipartisan support in Congress. Republicans want to do it just the same as Democrats do. Trump said, "I don't care what the military says." Obviously. He also wondered who we would name the bases after, if not Confederate generals. Al Sharpton? I mean, there must be other military heroes who didn't fight for the Confederacy we could name the bases after, but if not, yeah, Fort Al Sharpton would still be a hell of an improvement over a base named after a Confederate general. He continued to lie about the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic, claiming falsely that the U.S. has one of the lowest mortality rates in the world and insisting again that one day the virus will just disappear. He's still on this horse shit. When Wallace reminded him that he's been saying that for months and it still hasn't happened, Trump replied, "I'll be right eventually." He refused to say that he will accept the result of the election if he loses to Joe Biden. That's always nice to hear from an elected official. And finally, he bragged. He bragged about acing a cognitive test. When Wallace pushed back on this by informing Trump that he had taken the same test Trump had taken and not found it very challenging, Trump continued to delusionally boast about how great he did on the cognitive test. Sure, the first few questions are easy, Trump admitted, but some of them are so hard, he bets Chris Wallace couldn't even answer them. Wallace again assured him that he did answer them, and even asked Trump which questions he thought were so impossible, but Trump didn't respond specifically to that question. So, okay, here's where we are. The President of the United States is bragging on TV about acing a cognitive test that is designed as a diagnosis tool to evaluate patients for signs of dementia. The test Trump is referring to is called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. You can find copies of it online and decide for yourself how challenging you think it is. The thing is, it's not supposed to be challenging to a person who isn't developing dementia. That's the point of the test. Most people only take the test if their doctor suspects that they may be at risk of developing dementia. If you ace the test, that doesn't make you a genius. That makes you a person who, according to that test, isn't showing signs of dementia. Which, okay, good. The president doesn't have dementia? Then again, if Trump was developing dementia, at least that would be an excuse. Anyway, stay tuned for the post show in a moment, everybody, after the fade to black. Until then, that's 5. Speak out, act out, resist, look after each other. Hey, okay, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the post show. Me and Captain Kirk here will be your hosts for the post show portion of the show. I decided to choose Captain Kirk to sit on the microphone for this one because I really feel like we have gotten to the point in reality where we really just need Captain Kirk to beam down, identify the problems in our society, and just throw a wrench in the whole thing and force us to deal with it, like he used to do on Star Trek, on classic Star Trek. He would beam down to the alien planet. He would see, oh look, here's this thing they're doing that's fucking everything up, and he would violate the Prime Directive and fuck everything up even worse. And then he would say, well, now you have to deal with it. Bye, everybody. I mean, I feel like we need Captain Kirk to just force us to deal with some stuff. So, Captain Kirk, help us out. I'm getting some super chats, and I want to acknowledge John Burns, who left me a super chat earlier. Thank you very much for the super chat, my friend. And also just got one from Joe Byram, who says, are you willing to take the cognitive test, or at least the final questions that are the hardest and that Chris Wallace wouldn't even pass? Date, month, year, day, place, city. Yeah, I feel confident I would do okay on the cognitive test. The test, the version of it that I look, Chris Wallace said he took a version of it online. I could not find a version of it online that looked like you could take. I found copies of the test, but it's the kind of thing where it looks like you need to have it administered to you by somebody else. Because some of it is like memorization, and that doesn't seem fair to like look at a worksheet and be like, memorize these 5 words. Okay. It feels like I need to have it administered by somebody else. But I mean, it's not like the whole point of the cognitive test is not, oh, let's see if you could there shouldn't be a whole lot of suspense as far as whether or not you do well on the test, unless you are in some kind of actual cognitive decline. So for Trump to be taking a victory lap and be like, I did so good on the cognitive test, like, dude, everybody is supposed to be able to do okay on it unless there is an issue that needs to be addressed. But he treats it like he just won, like he just broke the record as a returning champion on Jeopardy or something. Anyway, before I get too far into this, I want to acknowledge my new, and by the way, hi to everybody in the chat. We'll hang out for about half an hour or so. But before I get too far into it, before I start hanging out in the chat, I want to acknowledge my new Patreon patrons, $5 or more. And they are Daryl Sawyer. Thank you, Daryl. Alan David Muir. Thank you, Alan. Andreas Bauer, thank you, Andreas. Brian Behringer, thank you, Brian. Philip Lincoln, thank you, Philip. Cliff Coleman, thank you, Cliff. And Jamie J, welcome back, Jamie J. Those are my newest $5 per month or more patrons. I remind you all, if you enjoy this work that I do here on YouTube and you want to help me out, and you can afford it, you can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives and become a patron at any dollar amount you wish per month, but $5 a month or more gets you a shout out at the end of the Facepalm 5. So there you go. Business taken care of. Thanks to all my patrons, especially my new patrons. And let's see what's going on in the live chat. Well, here's Jamie J in the live chat right now. Would you like me to administer a cognitive test on you? It wouldn't be diagnostic, and if you are genuinely concerned, I would recommend seeing a professional. But it sounds fun. Yeah, it sounds. Let's evaluate my risk for dementia. That sounds fun. I'll let you know. I'll let you know, Jamie. I appreciate the offer. And by the way, did I see in the chat that Neely is here? Neely, if you're still here, hi. Good to see you. 255 AD says, I got step back history. Tristan, to watch one of your Whirlpool vids. He says you could put more jokes in to make it clear it's parody. He thought it just felt like the real thing. Well, I get that. I see where he's coming from. Hi Neely. I don't know. Personally, if I made it that much more obvious, I feel like it would ruin the show. Like, I don't want it to be that super. I don't want it to get cartoonish. Like, I think personally, from my standpoint as the primary writer and the actor the performer who plays Michael Worley, I think it's pretty cartoony already. Like, I don't want to make it too broad just so people will be able to tell it's satire. Like, I'm kind of happy with the tone of the show right now. But I mean, I acknowledge that people watch it and say it's just like the real thing. So I mean, if people think that, people think that. Personally, I don't really see how anybody could watch it and genuinely think that it was like the real thing. Even though a lot of Worley's opinions and standpoints are close to things that people actually say, and in some cases are literally things that people actually say. I don't think overall you could it's close enough to reality that you could look at it and go, oh wow, But then again, people used to think that about Colbert too, and I always thought that was obviously satire. So I'm not the best person to judge. Got a couple of more super chats here. Here is one from Xeraxis, who says most cognitive tests require administration and some level of interpretation. Believe it or not, there is some science in psychology, psychiatry. Oh, you don't have to convince me. I am not a psychology or psychiatry denier. And a super chat from Stephen Clenard just says, #1 fan. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then here's another one just came in from Samuel Schumacher. Would you rather have President Kurtwood Smith as Anarax from Voyager Year of Hell, not Federation President, it's an important distinction, or William Shatner as evil Captain Kirk? Oh man, Anarax or evil Captain Kirk? Wow. I think I would go with evil Captain Kirk. How much fun would that be? Yeah, I know Poe's Law. I know, and like I say, I'm not like the most objective judge. Like I look at it as the person who's making it up, and I say this is so goofy. Nobody would ever think this wasn't satire. But I mean, obviously, there are people who say that it's too close. It's too close to the real thing for comfort. So I mean, I do have to, I do have to respect that. But personally, I don't see it. Volvo Cat 17 says, my younger cousin just came out to me as gay. I have no one to tell except for some random people. I'm really worried for him. His father is a military damaged, toxic, masculine bigot. Well, I'm very happy for your cousin feeling, for coming out and feeling comfortable doing that. And I'm very, very sorry that that they're in that situation. I mean, that must be awful. I've known people. There's a person I don't even actually personally know her, but she is sort of extended family of extended family, if you know what I mean. She's kind of like at the furthest edge of like my extended family circle, and we've never actually met, but she came out as trans a couple years ago and was assigned male at birth and came out as a trans woman, and her family was not supportive at all. I mean, was absolutely awful about it, and I still feel, I mean, I get the impression now she's come along far enough now, and she has gathered enough support around her that I think she's okay, or at least more okay than she was at first. But I mean, yeah, it's such a terrible situation. I really, really feel. I feel for your cousin, and I mean, at least your cousin has you. At least your cousin has you. I wish that they had more than just one person. Isaiah Taylor says, trigger warning, my Ask Away question will contain topics on racism and misanthropy. Okay, well, I will consider myself duly warned, and everybody else who happens to see this and is planning on watching Ask Away this Friday. 255 AD says 3 or 4 people in the chat asked him if it was real. Incidentally, it was the J.K. Rowling one. And that's, I mean, like I say, I mean, I have to respect people who say that they can't tell they can't tell the difference. But like, I don't get it personally. I don't get it. Oh, thanks, Jamie. I'm proud of them too. I'm proud of anybody in that situation who decides to be open about who they are, and I wish that there were more support that I could offer to them. 255 AD says critics of neoliberalism seriously worry about the police being privatized. Were you aware of that when you wrote that plot in Stephen Stuffy? Oh yeah, of course I was aware. Yeah, I was aware of the problems with privatization. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I did it. It's meant to be an example of the mayor abusing his power and going further to the right and becoming a more dangerous person. Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Yeah. Fernando Nogales says Kirk Spock for 2020 or Picard Riker. I got to go with Picard Riker. As much as I throw Kirk out here to say, hey, come here, come down to Earth and force us to deal with our shit with your reckless Starfleet ways. But if I were voting for a president and vice president, I would rather have Picard and Riker than Kirk and Spock. Although, I mean, having Spock on the ticket would be nice. Spock is a better fit for the ticket, or would be a better president or vice president than Riker would be. I must admit, as a longtime Riker lover and apologist, I'd rather have Spock. But if the choices are Kirk and Spock or Picard Riker, I got to go Picard Riker. God forbid something happens to Picard. I think Riker would be okay. I think Riker would be okay. Hey, Tombstone's here. Deadman. Steve, I think I prefer evil alternate universe Spock for president. That goatee makes him look like he gets things done. You're damn right it does. And it turns out, by the end of the episode, he's kind of he's kind of sort of a good guy. Kirk sort of, Prime Universe Kirk kind of talks evil Spock he talks him out of the Empire. He's like, come on, evil Spock, this Empire stuff ain't gonna work. Come on. And evil Spock is like, yeah, you know what, you have a point. I'm gonna give this a shot. I think he says, Captain Kirk, I will consider it, which, okay, that's all you can ask for. Evil Spock would be a vast improvement to our current situation. No question about it. Michael Olson says, I'm surprised Trump didn't wait until after the election to commute Rogerson. Well, why would he wait? I mean, he honestly he doesn't see anything wrong with it, and he knows that until the election, nobody's going to stop him. The Republicans aren't going to do anything about it, right? I mean, why would he think that he needed to wait? He probably waited longer than he wanted to anyway, because his own Justice Department didn't recommend it. And I'm sure he has people who are just as evil as he is, but are more practically minded and have, more of a realistic grasp of his reelection chances, who are probably saying to him, don't do all of the goofy shit that you want to do because it's only going to cost you votes. That's probably the reason why he waited as long as he did. He probably wanted to commute the guy's sentence or even fully pardon him, as soon as the conviction came through. I mean, in Trump's mind, I guarantee you, in Trump's mind, he waited too long as it is. He wasn't going to wait till the election. He sees no reason to. Super chat from Xeraxis. Thank you very much. As somebody that grew up and lives near Portland, one of the worst things is how many apologists there are for the police feds. It's affecting the state hugely, and I'm worried it'll just get worse. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about the ununiformed, unidentified federal agents dragging people into unmarked vans. I don't care how pro-cop you are, and I don't care how anti-protester you are. And maybe you genuinely believe that the people who are protesting in Portland are some kind of an urgent issue that need to be dealt with and the streets need to be cleared. Why the secret police shit? Why, if this is necessary and these people really need to be cleared out of the streets, which I don't think so. I don't think they're doing anybody any harm except for a little property damage. And it's not even that much property damage. If you looked at the list that the DHS released of here's why we had to send the feds into Portland. It was like a list, and it's like petty vandalism. It's like shit that normally the local cops would be dealing with. But if it really is that big of a deal, why do they need to be unidentified, unmarked agents? Why do they need to be secret police? Why do people need to be dragged in blindfolded? Why do people need to be not informed of the charges against them or the reason they were arrested? Why do people need to be arrested without a paper trail? There's all sorts of things. Even if the problem that they are claiming existed, there is no reason for that. There is no excuse for any of what is happening in the least bit. And the fact that anybody is saying, well, maybe it's okay because of whatever, that's, yeah. That cuts no ice with me at all. Even if things really were that bad, there's no excuse for it. And of course, things aren't that bad. 255 AD says, you know how the high-ups in the One True Church really kind of disrespect Michael? Are they aware his destruction of evidence is the main reason they're not all in jail? Yes, that's a good point. Allegedly. That probably accounts for the reason that they tolerate him as much as they do. You know, I would say that's the excuse there, is that the fact that he has any kind of a positive relationship with the church, period, is because of stuff like that. Because he is what would be called let's say a useful doofus, to avoid the more ableist term. He's a useful doofus. Here's a super chat from Volvo Cat 17. Thank you very much. Wanted to tell you more about Russia, but now it's kind of happening in your place. Yeah, really. Next step is randomly calling anti-Trump bloggers and YouTubers terrorists and arresting them, knocking their doors in. You know, we're probably a lot closer to that than I would like to admit. Yeah. I mean, again, like the unidentified federal cops grabbing people for no reason. Like that's, you know, that's the lives of others shit. Which is a great movie, by the way. A fantastic movie. But does not depict it is not aspirational in terms of how we ought to be organizing our society. Neely says it's not about need, it's about the fact that they can and there are no repercussions. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. That's exactly right. Trump's entire administration to this point has been that. Has been, I can do this, I want to do this, I'm going to do it. And the Republicans just saying, well, let him do it. And not even trying to stop him. Like that, you're absolutely right. And not just Trump, all the people that work for him too, all the people that are pulling in the same direction, not just Trump as an individual, but all of them. They're all guilty. They're all complicit in all of this. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's because they can. It's because they can and because they know that no one's going to stop them. Some random geek says, are you asking for Captain Kirk to start a revolution? Well, I knew that would be like catnip to you, buddy. I'm asking for him to come down and let me see how to put this. I suppose I am asking for, I'm asking for Captain Kirk to force us to deal with our problems. If you want to characterize that as a revolution, okay. I'm asking for Captain Kirk to do for us like he did for the people at the on the planet. And God, someone in the chat is going to have to tell me what the episode title is, because I can't remember it off the top of my head. But it's the episode of Classic Trek where they visit the planet where the two major powers are at war. But instead of actually having a war where people fight and kill each other, they just let the computer simulate the war, and then they randomly select people to be executed as casualties of war. And Kirk is like, well, this doesn't work for me. And he blows up the computer. So now they either have to sit down and make peace with each other or start fighting a war for real. That's what I want. I want Kirk to do the equivalent of that with us. I want him to beam down and go, oh, shit, this doesn't work at all. And, you know, he blows up something that forces us to actually deal with it. My Magnificent Octopus says, I'm kind of disappointed Gary 7 has failed to... Yeah, where the fuck is Gary 7? What's he been doing for the last 50 years? He was supposed to help us out, right? Siamak Yamin Afshar says, which episode of the Ensign's Log? A Taste of Armageddon. Yes, that's it. David Colby. Thank you very much, David. A Taste of Armageddon. And Jamie got it too. Yes. Which episode of the Ensign's Log was? I don't know. I know we've done it. I know we've done that episode, but I can't remember which Ensign's Log it was, because our episode titles are always different. And sometimes our actual episodes have very, very little to do with the Star Trek episode that they are sort of built on top of. So I can't remember. But I know we've done that episode. Yeah, Robert Miller says, we'd never deal, we just destroy ourselves. Yeah, probably right. Jamie J says, my polycule hosts a movie night once a week, and we invite our partners and close friends. Das Leben der Anderen, The Lives of Others, is currently on the list to watch soon. Oh, it is such a good movie. I haven't watched it for about 10 years, but I keep meaning to go back and watch it again. It is such a good movie. Oh, Oh, yeah, Lives of Others is such a great movie. I hope you enjoy it when you watch it. I hope you. I mean, it's a good movie in my opinion. If you watch it, I hope you enjoy it too. Soat says it's sad that the United States is moving toward an authoritarian regime after it liberated half the world 80 years ago. Right? Right? And we're still so up our own ass about World War II. Right? We still 80 years later we remember we won. We remember we kicked their ass, right? We kicked the German ass. We saved France, those ungrateful pricks. We saved France. They'd all be speaking German if it weren't for, we remember the war, and we continue to glorify it and to glorify our role in it. But it's like, did we forget who we were fighting? Did we forget that the enemies were all harshly authoritarian regimes? They were fascists and Nazis and authoritarian monarchists that were trying to take over the entire world. Did we forget that? Apparently. Am I out? Oh, Sofa Justice Warrior says I'm out of sync. Fernanda says it's. Yeah, we agree that it's awesome. Am I out of sync? Can somebody else confirm? If so, I will drop out and come back in. Yes, Mr. Camerite, R.I.P. Grant Imahara. Yes, that was rough. That was a surprise. That was a shock. That was, yeah. And 255 AD says the Soviet Union won the war. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. We tend to downplay their role for some reason in the United States. But yes, absolutely. Oh, the sync is good. Okay, sorry. Sofa Justice Warriors. Everybody else says the sync is okay, so maybe it's a problem on your end. Thanks everybody for confirming that. Yeah, the Grant Imahara thing was tough. I mean, because I was a huge Mythbusters fan, Davlin Gage Sphere says, how would you improve Doctor Who? And if you had a TARDIS, where would you travel to? I haven't watched enough Doctor Who to say how I would improve it. I don't feel like I know the show well enough to say that. If I had a TARDIS, where would I travel to? Well, I would travel back to when I was about 22 and tell myself a few things. And then I don't know, maybe go back in time and kill Hitler just to see how it turns out. Douglas Sharon says, are masks mandatory in Maryland? Yes, I think they are. They are. I think they're mandatory in public. Yeah, and if they're not, then they are. They are at the very least very strongly encouraged. Yeah, I think masks are mandatory, and some random geek says they should be mandatory pretty much everywhere. They should, and I think they are, and I think that. Or at the very least, people are listening to the strong encouragement for the masks, because Maryland has done a lot better with the pandemic than other places in the country. Although our cases are starting to slowly climb up again, our new daily cases are starting to tick upwards again, which worries me. It's not as steep as other places. It's not as bad as Arizona or Florida, where they're just going way up. All at once, but it was trending steadily downward for a long time, and now it's starting to go back up again, and that worries me. But yeah. 255 AD says, why are the high-ups in the One True Church trying to get into contact with the people who are delivering food to Novation? Are they worried about getting sued? No, I think it's probably just that they want to find out, they want to know things about Novation. Novation is not talking to anybody. He's not seeing anybody except the food delivery drivers. So they want, or maybe there's something they want to tell the delivery drivers. Maybe something they want to make sure they're aware of since they've had contact with Novation. I don't know. Maybe. Chris H. says, what's your take on making DC a state? I'm in favor of it. Oh, Isaiah Taylor, I guess for the TARDIS question, the launch of Apollo 11 and the 90s. Oh, I would love to go back. I would love to take a time machine back and watch the Apollo 11 moon landing for sure. And if I had a TARDIS, which is not just a time machine, but a spaceship, I could watch the moon landing like the whole way. I could watch the launch from Earth, and then I could go to the moon and actually watch the landing from the moon. That'd be pretty cool. Oh, here's a super chat and a sticker from Jason Allen. Well, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate that. It's a little sticker of a little thing riding on a rocket, and yeah, he looks happy. And thank you very much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Neil Blumengarten says, what, Florida is going up? But our governor says it's plateauing. Yeah, he does, doesn't he? 5AD says, did you know SCOTUS okayed executing a man with Alzheimer's last week? Was kind of surprised that wasn't in this week's 5. It would have been if not for a couple other things, but not just that particular case, but the sudden rush for federal execution. Didn't they executed 2 or 3 people last week, didn't they? Like all of a sudden they were like, we got to start killing people. Come on, let's go. Let's clear it out. Like, yeah, that would have been something that I talked about for sure. Yeah. Volvo Cat 17 says, Doctor Who literally has an episode called Let's Kill Hitler. Spoiler, they only managed to lock him in a wardrobe. The episode's not really about him. Ah, well. Xeraxis says, personally, I don't mind if people aren't wearing masks in super low density areas, going on walks and such, but anywhere there's people, there should definitely be mandatory mask policies. Yeah, my feeling is as long as you are in a situation like outdoors where it's feasible to maintain social distance, then yeah, I'm fine with people not wearing masks as long as they behave responsibly and as long as they have the space to do that. But yeah, if you're in a situation like if you're indoors or if you're outdoors in a situation where there's a lot of people around and you can't maintain distance, yeah, absolutely, you should be wearing a mask. Like, we know that it works. The CDC has repeatedly said, and other countries who have dealt with the pandemic a lot more effectively than we have borne this out, that everybody wearing a mask in social situations is the best way to stop the spread of the disease. So why is anybody fighting this? Like, I keep asking this question this week. I keep asking this question during this show whenever we confront this problem that is created by people who just refuse to do what is obviously the right thing. Why are we even fighting about this? We know that if everybody wore a mask, it would seriously cut down on the transmission of the pandemic. Why are we fighting about whether or not we should do that? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Vovica, read my last one, please. Okay. I will go back. The one before the Doctor Who one? Republicans probably should build a Death Star. Then it would be so easy to just blow it up and make Republicans go bankrupt. Boy, that is a great plan. You know, they called I think it was Trump's now fired campaign manager, right? The guy who he people were pointing out that like he had basically embezzled a whole bunch of money from the Trump campaign. Like he had bought himself a new car and all this stuff. And he was Trump's campaign manager. And he said on Twitter, like a few months ago, that the Trump campaign had compiled this massive war chest and they had devised this brilliant re-election campaign and they called it the Death Star. And everybody immediately seized on that. And they were like, you know what happens to the Death Star in the movie, right? Why would any? First of all, if you fancy yourself the good guys, and the Republicans are heels that think they're baby faces, right? So why would you choose to identify yourselves with the villains from Star Wars? But that's a whole separate question. Why would you name something on your campaign that you expect to be a success, the Death Star, when it's one of the most famous non-successes in movie history? Twice. They built 2 Death Stars. And the same thing happened to the second one as happened to the first one. Why would you call it the Death Star, man? Yeah, but anyway. Yeah, Brad Parscale. Thank you, Keely. Yeah. Brad Parscale called it the Death Star. Watch the movie. Like, you know? Like, watch the movie. Mr. Camerite says, Steve, have you seen any of the videos from a template institute here on YouTube? Thank you. A lot of great videos, including from Star Trek and Star Wars. No, I don't think I've ever seen that or heard of that, so sorry. Xeraxis says, I personally hate wearing masks, but also I don't leave the house except for walks. Wish more people could just do the same thing. Don't like them, don't leave the house. Simple. Yeah, and again, if you do have to leave the house, because there are people who work jobs where they can't stay home, and there are essential workers and healthcare professionals, and just all people who need to go out and go to the grocery store, or just need to go out and get some exercise or get out of the house. Like, there's all kinds of reasons to leave the house. Just wear a fucking mask. Right? Like, just... Some random geek says Rebecca Watson covered a paper where countries with a more individualistic culture did poorly with everyone wearing masks. That's interesting. I didn't see that video. I didn't watch... I saw it in my feed, but I haven't watched it yet. Volvo Cat 17 says, Republicans be like, I love the Republic. And then they are like, the Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire. Republicans are secretly Imperials. Order 66 is coming. That's kind of what I was saying during the first part of the show tonight. Like, it's all a pose. Like the whole Republican right-wing conservative shtick about individual liberty and small government and it's all a pose. It's all an affectation. Their actions suggest that they don't actually care about any of that. They don't give a fuck. They're perfectly happy with an authoritarian government as long as they think they're benefiting from it. As long as they're in charge of the government, they're the authority, and they get to use it to hurt the people that they think deserve to be hurt. They don't give a fuck about small government or individual liberty. Trump isn't a small government Republican, and neither are they. Obviously not. They only want to cut the government and limit the government when it'll hurt poor people and black people and people of color generally and immigrants. When time comes for that, when the time comes to fuck up a poor person's life, oh yeah, they're all for small government. But if an authoritarian government can also fuck up that poor person, well, then they're all for that too. It's all a pose. It's all a pose. 255 AD says, wouldn't Kirk and Riker be the only 2 out of the 4 eligible to run for president? That's true. That's true. Picard was born in France and Spock was born in... Yes, you're right. You're right. If we're talking about president of the United States, yes, Picard as a non-natural citizen, as a non-native citizen, would not be eligible, nor would Spock. So yes, it would have to... You're right. In terms of constitutional eligibility, it would have, of those 4 that were mentioned earlier, it would have to be Kirk and Riker. Yeah. Boy. I guess Kirk would be the... Yeah, I guess Kirk could be the president and Riker could be the VP. I don't think Kirk would accept being VP, so I think he would have to be the president. Scott Dittman says, hey, Steve, ever notice, and you probably have because you're quite observant. Oh, go on. One of the troubles with Trump is the endless run-on sentences of lies which become impossible to refute all at once. Yeah, he is, when I used to pay attention to the great debate part of YouTube, the atheism or science versus creationism, evolution versus creationism, it was known as the Gish Gallop, which is the argumentative technique of just throwing out so much bullshit that when it's the other person's turn to speak, there's no way they can possibly get to all of it. And Trump does that very effectively, although I don't think he does it on purpose. I think he just does it because he's just so full of shit that it just pours out of his mouth. And I honestly, most of the time, I don't think he knows what the next word he's going to say is, let alone has the wherewithal to employ some kind of conscious rhetorical strategy. But yeah, he definitely does that. He definitely does that. Keely Hardy says, Bender 2020, kill all humans. You meatbags had your chance. Yeah, I mean, we are making a very compelling case for the Bender presidency, are we not? Lag Lover says, Cisco for 2024. Shouldn't that be Gabriel Bell for 2024? Spike Boland, who watches Star Wars and roots for the Empire? Apparently a whole bunch of the Star Wars fans on the internet. Like, I wonder the same thing. Who's rooting for the Empire? Apparently a lot of the people who claim to be Star Wars fans on the internet are super into the Empire. Yeah. David Colby says, Kim Stanley Robinson once described libertarians as anarchists who want police protection from their slaves. Wow. Yeah. And man, is that ever feeling accurate? Oh, yeah. For real. For real. That like feels painfully accurate. 255 AD asks, have you seen the Lower Decks trailer? Yes. Yes, I have. And it seems all right, I guess. Like, I wasn't blown away by it. I was actually, Jason and I were talking about it during our recording session for the podcasts last weekend. And my feeling there is that I still kind of think it could go either way. You know, like it could be a really funny, really good show, or it could be like really, really bad. And judging by that trailer, it's hard to tell which way it's going to fall. And I feel like it's going to fall one direction or the other. I don't feel like when I watch it, I'm going to have a neutral reaction. I feel like when I watch Lower Decks, I'm either going to say, oh man, this is fucking hilarious, or I'm going to say, oh wow, this was a bad idea. You know, like this is just, this is a miscalculation. And it's hard to tell from the trailer. It's hard to tell from the trailer if it's going to turn out to be like a BoJack Horseman kind of thing, or if it's going to turn out to be, I don't know, like one of those animated monstrosities that they have been putting on Fox after The Simpsons. You know, where it's like, what even is this? Who thinks this is funny? Yeah. So I'm not sure, but yes, I have seen the trailer, and I'm reserving judgment until I actually see the show. Davlin Gagesphere says, why would people root for the Empire? I mean, I guess if you like pasty, melty faces and have a fetish for black leather, well, there you go. I mean, you know, everybody has a thing. $255 AD reminds us, again, Bender was manufactured in Mexico, so he is not constitutionally eligible. Boy, I like having 255 AD here as like the Supreme Court Justice who is like, no, nope. Wrong. Can't. Ineligible. Can't run. Mr. Camerite, do you think in the future they're going to call this whole Goya bean nonsense Beangate? If they even call it anything. Like, I mean, honestly, the Goya thing is a problem. It's against ethics regulations, like federal officials, executive branch officials are not allowed to endorse commercial products. So it's a problem. But I mean, is it even in like the top 50 problems of this administration? Like, I mean, I don't know if people are barely talking about the Goya bean thing now. So is it still going to be enough of a story that people are going to call it Beangate? I mean, that's the only thing I would say is like, there's so much other shit happening that the Goya thing is going to get lost. I mean, yes, of course, it's outrageous. It's an outrageous example of corruption in a sea of blatant corruption. Isaiah Taylor says, what do you think of a Star Trek anime TNG series? I mean, I'd be open to it. I would give it a shot. I wouldn't say no. You know, yeah. I mean, I would again like it's hard to say because like I would have to see the show. It's hard to say just from like a premise or even a trailer. It's hard to say, oh yeah, that looks great. You know, sometimes a lot of times a trailer does make something look great. You know, but like with that Lower Decks trailer, like I say, it's just it's tough for me to tell. Super chat from Keely Hartle. Thank Keely Hardy. Sorry, I keep mispronouncing your name, Keely. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. And it says Goya beans is people. It's people. You maniacs! You blew it up. Yeah. Yeah, Xeraxis says, considering 2020 might have an attempted coup by a fascist party by the end, I kind of doubt the beans are going to survive the year. Ironically, the meme will have a shorter shelf life than the beans. Nicely done. 255 AD, boy, I'm right here with you for this one. Whenever I talk about future historians, I always feel the need to preface it with, if there are any. Right there with you. Right there with you. Volvo Cat 17 says, what I like already about Lower Decks is how they fully embrace the TNG visual style. Yeah, visually, I have no complaints about it. Visually, in terms of character design and the look of the show and the animation, it seems fine. It seems like a typical current, like present day animated show. You know, I have no issues with that. It's just, you know, the writing and, is it going to be a good show? Are the jokes going to land? Is it going to be funny? Yeah, that's the problem. But yeah, in terms of how it looks, judging by the trailer, yeah, I think it looks fine for sure. Yeah, my Magnificent Octopus with all the various Trump scandals of the day. I wonder which are going to even be remembered, right? Like, how are our future historians, if there are any, going to pick? How are they going to sift through all this horseshit and be like, okay, no, but out of all of this, these are the ones that we really need to, put up on the board, right? There's so much, Jesus, from day one. Like from day one of this administration, there has been such a ceaseless torrent of bullshit and corruption and criminality and abuse. Like, where do you even start? Where do you even start? Hi, Caroline. Isaiah Taylor says, even now that Trump has worn a mask, I don't think he can compete with Biden. Well, not in terms of mask wearing, because Biden's been wearing one for months. He is much like he would probably do on the cognitive test. Biden has jumped over that very, very low hurdle. Oh, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Every public health official is saying we should be wearing masks. Okay, I, as a presidential candidate, will make sure to wear a mask when I go out. How hard was that? So, in general, can he compete with Biden? I hope not. I hope the current trend holds. I hope, as much of a problem as I have with Biden in many, many ways, I hope I plan to vote for him. I hope he wins the election. I hope the current trend continues because, as my grandfather used to say about death, President Biden might suck, but he's better than the alternative. Andrew Hayes says, any opinions about the Orville? I've been rewatching the first two seasons and have really been enjoying it. TNG vibe with a comedic twist. I think the Orville got pretty good in season 2. I think season 1, especially early season 1, was a little shaky. I think they couldn't quite find the balance between the comedy and like straight Star Trek style sci-fi adventure. And sometimes it's like it couldn't decide which show it wanted to be and how much of each to have. I think by season 2, it had mostly figured it out. And I think season 2, it was a pretty good show. Yeah. I'm not like as over the moon about it as some people are. Like, I know there are some people who are like, The Orville is like the best show ever. And like, I've never liked it that much, but by season 2, I think it was a pretty good show, and I did enjoy it. And I look forward to seeing more of it. Volvo Cat 17, I think you should consider watching Star Trek Continues if you have no allergies for fan-made Trek. It's really the best one out there, at least for the memory of Grant, who plays Sulu. I have seen every episode of Star Trek Continues, and the only reason why I haven't mentioned it more in my Star Trek videos is because of the problems associated with Vic Mignogna, who is the creator and who plays Captain Kirk, who has been banned from fan conventions for harassment and has been called out for homophobia and all kinds. It turns out that Vic isn't such a nice guy. He's kind of a shitty guy. And the fact that he is one of the driving forces behind Star Trek Continues kind of makes me reluctant to sing its praises as loudly as I think it deserves, just based on itself and on the content itself. Because yeah, I think it's great. I agree with you. I think it is by far the best fan-made Star Trek that I've ever seen. I think it's fantastic. I think it's well written. It's very well shot, well produced, well edited, very well acted. And some of the episodes, especially some of the episodes from sort of the second half, the back half of their run, where they ended up doing a total of 11 episodes. And some of those episodes in the final, like 3 or 4, are really, really good. Like, really good. So yeah, I think Star Trek Continues is fantastic. I'm reluctant to talk a lot about it because it turns out Vic is such a shit. But yeah, thank you for mentioning it. And yes, Grant Imahara plays Sulu, and he's terrific. He's just terrific. Plasma burn death. Let me go back and see which one of your questions I missed. And by the way, as I usually say, like, it's nothing personal. If I miss your question in the live chat, it's almost always because I just didn't see it. So I apologize if I missed your question. Let me see what Plasma burn death's question was. I'm not seeing it. How fucking far back is it? In the meantime, while I'm looking, Jorge Batista asks, did that Jerry Ryan tweet bring more followers to your channel? Probably a few. I don't know exactly how many, but I probably gained a few, yeah. I mean, it wasn't like a major explosion or anything, but yeah, I think I got a few. All right, Plasma Burn Death. I'm scrolling back, and the post that is being referred to must be way back here, because or I'm just not seeing it. So if you want to post it again, please feel free, and I'll answer it if you want to put it back up. But I'm not seeing it. Oh, okay. No, I found it. Okay, is it the Chicago Trump thing? Did you see updates on Chicago Trump federal troops invading pretty much martial law? I've seen people mention it, but I haven't looked up. I haven't actually looked up and seen what's going on yet. So I don't know a lot about it right now. I'll look into it after the show's over, which will be in a few minutes. By the way, I'm going to start wrapping up the show here. So if anybody has like final questions they want me to see or ignore or miss, please ask them in the next couple of minutes, and then we'll wrap this up. But yeah, I haven't. I've seen people mention the Chicago thing, but I don't know exactly what's going on. Although martial law, I mean, it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound any different than what Trump is trying to do in Portland. Maybe a more extreme form of it. Volvo Cat says, yeah, too bad Vic turned out to not be a nice guy, but we shouldn't downplay the fact that it's not only his creation. Many good people also made it. We shouldn't cancel. Yeah, I agree. I'm not saying cancel it. I'm just saying, like, for me personally, I would be like as I think I said already, I mean, I think it's terrific. Like, I really, really like it. But because Vic is all over it, personally, I would need to be very careful about how I would promote it, or how I would praise it in a video without erasing the shitty stuff that Vic did. Right. But I don't think it should be like canceled or that nobody's allowed to enjoy it or anything like that. 'Cause I mean, I agree with you. It's fantastic. Like, it's a really, and yes, the contributions of the other people involved in it do not deserve to be discarded just because Vic turned out to be a dick. I agree completely. Davlin Gatesford says, if you woke up one day on the Enterprise with the abilities of Superman, what would you do? Leave the Enterprise and just fly around the galaxy as Superman. Yes, some random geek, you're right. Jerry Ryan did like my video, and Ira Stephen Bear did say I have good taste in Star Trek pilots. These are both facts. These are both true facts. Davlin Gatesford says, my friend is writing a book, and I was wondering what your thoughts would be on the concept of it. It's pirates versus the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. I mean, it's an interesting... It's an interesting premise. How are pirates going to defeat the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse? That would be my question. Plasma Burn Death says, if you can have Mr. Worley, please sell 99.5% silver solution to ward off COVID and lizard people. I think adding something like that will make it clear to people. Maybe not. Yeah, I know. That might actually convince people that it's real if I start doing that. Superman versus the Borg. Who would win? Superman. How are the tubules to inject the nanites wouldn't be able to penetrate his skin? The Borg would never be able to assimilate Superman. They would shoot out their little tubules to inject the nanites to assimilate him, and it would just bounce off his skin. So they could never assimilate him. So they could never defeat him. Because that's the only monkey trick that the Borg have. Their weapons, I mean, I guess maybe if they gained a knowledge of kryptonite, maybe they could synthesize kryptonite and have like weapons to use against him, or come up with some kind of atomic weapon that was powerful enough to hurt him. But like, generally speaking, I don't see how they would be much of a threat to Superman. I think he would probably do the Christopher Reeve thing, and he wouldn't destroy all the Borg because he's Superman. He wouldn't want to just kill all those people. But he would like take the Borg cube and he would, lift it around his head and fling it around and just throw it like back into the Delta Quadrant, or, back into the transwarp conduit that they use to travel across great distances. He would do something like that. And then he would do like kind of what they did in the last episode of Voyager and destroy the transwarp hub so that they couldn't use it to travel back and threaten other planets. So yeah, Superman would... Come on, the Borg versus Superman. Look, if Voyager could defeat the Borg, I mean, we're talking like late stage Borg, like Borg in Voyager, right? Like, if I don't want to turn this into a bash Captain Janeway fest because I do that too much, or at least I have done that too much in the past. But let me just put it this way: if Captain Janeway and the crew of the Starship Voyager can defeat the Borg, Superman is not going to have too much of a problem defeating the Borg. Okay, that's all I'll say. Vova. Now, this is an interesting one. Volvo Cat says, Dr. Manhattan versus Q, who would win? That, I think, is more interesting, but I think it would have to say Q because Dr. Manhattan is not omnipotent, right? I mean, Dr. Manhattan is incredibly powerful, but I don't know if they ever established that Dr. Manhattan is omnipotent. But Q is. Like, Q could just snap his finger and turn him into a 6-foot blue dick if he wanted to. Like, that would be nothing to Q. Like, Q would just do that, right? So, but that would be a more interesting... I think that would be a more interesting story to write. Oh, hey, Jesse. Oh, Jesse Gender shows up right as I'm about to wrap up the show. Hi, Jesse. Super chat from Flint Reed. Tribble or Porg, Steve? Again, the public has the right to know. Have I answered this already? Or no. Before it was before it was Porg and Ewok, right? Tribble or Porg? Well, I mean, I own a Tribble. I don't own a Porg, so I guess just the facts seem to point to I would lean toward Tribble because I don't own a Porg. I own a Tribble, so I have to say Tribble. And plus, it's Star Trek versus Star Wars, and I'm Team Star Trek. So, yeah. Good to see you too, Jesse. Okay, John Fordham. Here's another easy one. Who would win, the crew of Voyager or Superman? Superman. As much glee as I'm getting out of this conversation, like, I don't usually like these who would win conversations or these who would win questions because it just seems kind of, it's like fanboyish, like who would beat up who. And it's like, it doesn't matter because they're fictional and it's however you write the story. It's like, I remember somebody asked, it was back in like 2000, 2001 when Hush was the ongoing story in the Batman comic. And it was written by Jeff Loeb. And there's an issue in Hush where Superman is mind controlled by Poison Ivy, and him and Batman have a fight. And Batman, because he has the kryptonite ring, Batman is able to beat Superman in the fight, right? And even with the kryptonite ring, people were asking Jeff Loeb, like, how could Batman beat Superman in a fight? And Jeff Loeb's answer was, because it's Batman's book. Like, that's Batman wins because that's the way the story goes, because it's all made up and that's the way I made it up to happen. So, but yeah, like if I was writing the story, I'm sure someone could write an awesome story where the crew of Voyager is somehow able to defeat Superman, but the writer of that story would not be me. Oh, David, now here's how it would go. Yes, here's how it would go. David Colby says Superman and the Voyager crew would team up to get the Voyager crew home. Yes, exactly. That's how it would happen. Exactly. That's how it would happen. John Fordham says, I think the crew of Voyager would techno-babble Superman to death. As everybody knows, Superman has 3 main weaknesses. Okay, kryptonite, magic, and excessive techno-babble. If they start throwing out, like invented babble about warp theory and shit, then Superman will immediately weaken. And if he cannot get within proximity of a yellow sun soon enough, he will be defeated. He will fall in defeat. Absolutely. 255 AD says, does it take you out of sci-fi if the politics of the future are like today? I feel like future politics has to be really different or there won't be a future. No, that doesn't bother me at all. That doesn't bother me at all. I kind of like it, actually. If it leads to a good story, I don't have a problem with it at all. Yeah, Jesse says it's about the intention of the character, too. Superman is supposed to be limitless, showing goodness and unlimited power. Star Trek has finite limits. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. Although I do think that a Superman, my favorite Supermans, whatever, have been versions of him that are not, that are not as powerful as others, right? Like I've said many times, my favorite Superman outside of the comics, and probably including the comics, is the Fleischer Brothers animated Superman from the 40s. And he is very low powered compared to subsequent versions. Like he's definitely not as powerful as like the Christopher Reeve Superman, who I also absolutely love and adore. But yeah, you're right. You're right, Jesse. It's part of the point of Superman is that he can do pretty much anything, and he chooses to do good and to help people. Volvo Cat 17, yes, I know. I still got to watch. I got to watch The Expanse. I got to watch Legion. I got to watch Leverage. There's all kinds of shows I got to watch. Right now I'm working my way through Baywatch. Okay, man. So it's gonna have to wait. Once I get through Baywatch, then I can reevaluate and think, okay, do I want to go back and resume my Deep Space Nine rewatch? Do I want to go back and resume Magnum PI, which I still haven't finished? Or do I want to jump into one of those, The Expanse or Legion or Leverage or something else? I don't know. The world is my oyster. I have nothing but choices. Last question. David Colby, have you read Superman Smashes the Klan? Yes, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I read it last month, I think I mentioned it on a live stream at some point. But yes, yes, Neely, Baywatch. You're goddamn right. We're about a third of the way into season 7, so it's really, I mean, it goes downhill creatively almost immediately, but it's really going downhill creatively now. Oh, it's so fun to watch. But yes, yes, David, I have read Superman Smashes the Klan, and it's awesome. I loved it. I love the art. I love the story. I thought it was great. Daryl Letts, you like Baywatch, Steve? I thought you were anti-sexist. Yeah, look, Baywatch is an extremely sexist show, but I enjoy it. Ironically, I enjoy it as just a fun thing to have on TV and watch. I cannot say that I approve of Baywatch 100%, but do I like watching it? Do I have a great time watching it? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's an incredibly fun bad show. I don't know how else to put it. It's one of the all-time great fun bad show watches. And I'm probably going to watch an episode of it in a few minutes after I wrap up this live stream. Speaking of which, thank you all so much for watching. And thank you all for hanging out with me and asking questions and just being generally cool people. Reminder once again about the Patreon, patreon.com/Steve Shives if you want to support the work that I do here on YouTube. And also, if you want to listen, if you want to hear my voice but not have to look at me, which I guess you could do on YouTube as well. You don't have to be watching this. You could just be listening to it. Not how it's designed to be consumed, to be fair, but you could. You have that option. But you can also listen to the podcasts that I co-host along with the great Jason Harding, who is basically me, but a lot funnier and older. And that's it. And he has kids. So those are the main things, the main differences between me and Jason. The kids, the age, and the fact that he's just generally a lot better and funnier than I am. But anyway, we co-host a couple of podcasts as a part of the Let Me Listen podcast family. We co-host Late Seating, the movie review podcast, which just had a new episode go up on Friday, which is our review of the classic Ingmar Bergman film, The Seventh Seal, which is a really, really good show and obviously a great movie. So listen to that. And also we co-host the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast, which has a new episode coming up this Friday. So check that out as well. Let Me Listen podcasts.com or links in the description for other ways to listen. Also, speaking of links in the description, don't forget the charity links that have been compiled into a Google Doc by our friend Some Random Geek with links for how you can contribute to help out some friends of ours who are in some financial need at the moment. And also there's still the link for the Black Lives Matter DC fundraiser, which is still raising money to help support protesters and Black Lives Matter DC. So check that out and contribute to that if you are able to do so. I would encourage that. So that's it, everybody. I will see you on Friday for another edition of Ask Away. And until then, thank you all so much once again for watching. Please take care of yourselves. Be careful, be safe, and take it easy. I'll see you later.